along. There'll be no more sobbing when he starts throbbing his own sweet song. Wake up, you sleepyheads, get up, get out of bed, cheer up.
Hello and welcome to the Red Robin podcast, powered by Budget Ties Auto Centre and 𝗓𝓸𝓫𝓲𝓷𝓼 Chartered Accountants, the independent 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗏𝗏 Rovers podcast. A warm welcome to this week's Red Robin podcast weekly. Rovers Derby Day defeat has seen the Robins slip to 8th in the table, with our cross-city rivals now just 2 points behind us after 18 rounds of Super League. The team above us in 7th place are up next, and though the trip to take on the Leeds Rhinos represents a fantastic opportunity to get our season back on track. Before we take a look forward to the Robins round 19 fixture, though, let's look back at Sunday's defeat at the hands of Tony Smith's Black and White at sold-out Craven Park. And to help me do that is Steve Till and Karl Smith. Good evening, gentlemen. How are we today?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, all good, thanks, mate.
Yeah, how was you feeling after Sunday, Steve?
Bit demoralised. I felt that they played as badly in the first half as they played on Good Friday, but we didn't put the points on them. Just little things going wrong, and incidents that changed the game as far as I was concerned. But, you know, we'll live to fight another day.
Yeah, Karl, it was a bit of a funny atmosphere at Craven Park on Sunday, wasn't it? A lot of Rovers fans were sort of going in hope rather than expectancy, which is a bit of a shame, isn't it, considering we did put the Black and Whites to the sword earlier on in the season. But obviously with the injury toll, the recent run of results, not many people were expecting a good result. And it seemed just a little bit flat walking around Craven Street and into the East Stand, that people were praying for a victory rather than expecting one.
Yeah, most definitely, Chris. I got that vibe earlier in the week from myself and people around me, and obviously when I walked into the ground, it was a bit of a lull, wasn't there? Sort of building up to kick off. I think everything's took its toll, you know, recently, and ultimately that's what happened. Excuse me, and reflected on the field in the end. So as much as my heart was saying, yeah, I want a Rovers win, I think there was a good 70-80% of me being realistic, thinking I don't think we'll do it today. You know, but it doesn't you know, make you not want to win. So yeah, I think you're correct in what you're saying there.
Cast your mind back, Steve, to pre-kick-off.
Sorry?
What, as I was going to say, just cast your mind back to pre-kick-off on Sunday. What was your expectations for the game?
Hopeful. I've been following the game for so long, and I know that coming into a derby, you can't be confident in any way, shape or form most of the time. And I wasn't confident, but I was hopeful. And I'd heard everyone around me was on a downer for it. You know, there were doubts in everybody's mind, and I was just hoping those doubts wouldn't be in the players' minds. There might have been, though.
Yeah, and when we saw the lineup, Karl, I mean, probably the biggest surprise was seeing Jimmy Karl get his first start of the season. He slotted in at the second row alongside Kane Lynette. Starting at fullback was Jack Walker. Ethan Ryan, he made his return to the side. He started on the right wing, partnering Tom Opposite. We saw Kenny Dowell and Ryan Hall on the left, Mikey Lewis and Milnes in the halves. Kennedy was starting prop along with George King. Jez Litton once again started at hooker. Like we said, Karnhorst and Lynette in the second row already, and Dean Hadley loose forward. And on the bench, it was Parcells, Staunton, Johnson, and Utley with Aydin, the 18th man. I don't know, Karl. I mean, people were a bit sceptical about our chances on Sunday. And to be fair, when I read that lineup out, I don't think that's a bad lineup, is it? And I think that was reflected in our opening sort of 20-30 minutes in the first half, where we looked, for me, the better team.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of the lineup, Chris. There's some names in there where you think, you know, they could do a job in terms of covering, but there's also a lot of factors, you know, that come into play in terms of even Ryan hadn't played for weeks. Obviously, Karnhorst, I think that was his first game all year. and there's people, you know, round pegs in square holes, so to speak. So optimistic on the team sheet, but in reality, it was always going to be, you know, a difficult ask.
Yeah, I mean, go on, Steve.
Sorry.
Go on, Steve.
One thing I was disappointed in, and I have been for some time, is not using Matt Parcell from the off. I think he gives us a bit. He worries the opposition, and he gives us a bit of oomph, and leads the rest of the forwards. They follow on behind him, and I think it was the league game earlier in the season where that was the first time we didn't use him from the off, and we lost that. And then it started to become a bit of a regular thing. And I think unless he's got some kind of injury, I don't see why he's not playing from the off and let take it from there. But it does give us that go forward early on, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Karl, do you think Jes deserves to start? I mean, to be fair, he's the only player who's ever present all season. He will be on Friday when we take on Leeds. Michael Lewis, of course, suffering that HIA, which rules him out. 𝗔𝘂𝗻𝗄𝗧 will be the only player on Friday who's played every game of the season. But I suppose the point Steve's making is that Jes and Matty Parcell bring different things to the side at different times. Although Woody Peters is putting his faith in 𝗔𝘂𝗻𝗄𝗧 at the moment as the starting hooker.
I take Steve's point, and that would not, in seasons, you know, gone past, that would be normally the case. Matty Parcell probably would start, but I think 𝗔𝘂𝗻𝗄𝗧, like you say, has been evergreen this year, and I think he has improved, and you know, up to the last few weeks where, like most players in the squad, they've dropped off a little bit, haven't they? So I think 𝗔𝘂𝗻𝗄𝗧 was right to start, and I think he's earned that starting place the last few weeks. You know, so for me, he's always says from day one, as Willie Peters, that doesn't matter who you are, it's sort of you play on merit, and that's been the case with 𝗔𝘂𝗻𝗄𝗧.
But what's Parcell done wrong?
It's not necessarily doing anything wrong, Steve. Like I said to you, I take your point, and in seasons gone past, Parcell would have been number one for me. But if Willie Peters doesn't reward these players with good performances, what message does that send out to the rest of the squad? So I agree with you 100% in what you're saying with Parcell. He probably hasn't done anything wrong. It's just the form of other players as well. Yeah.
I think what's surprising me, Steve, is not necessarily the fact that Parcell's not starting, because I think, you know, 𝗔𝘂𝗻𝗄𝗧 probably does warrant a starting place at times, but it's the amount of game time Parcell then is getting at the moment, because he seems to be used quite late on in the game rather than dovetailing at half time or just after half time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And he's coming on often when it's a bit of a lost cause. I think Litton adds later on. He adds more later on than Parcell does. I think if Parcell started, you can bring Litton on, and his effervescence adds more to the team than Parcell. And that's why I'll switch it the other way. You know, I'd always start with Parcell at the moment. Always.
Yeah, I wonder.
And I don't think, can I just say, I don't think it's anything to do, in a sense, with who's the better of the two. Like you've said, Karl, they each bring their own performance to the team. But like I say, I just think you get more early impetus by having Parcell on early on.
Yeah,
what I would say is, sorry, Chris. What I would say in terms of what Steve just said and what I've just said, I didn't think Litton and there's a few others didn't have great games on Sunday, so it wouldn't surprise me that Parcell would go back and start on Friday night, because there was a few end of the set options where Litton picked the wrong option. A lot of the senior players seems to be down his throat a little bit, and maybe the coach will see these sort of key moments in games that leads to the right decision more often than not. So it wouldn't surprise me if you see Litton drop to the bench on Friday and Matty Parcell back in from the start against his old club.
Can I just change the person subject a little bit? Can I just say how well, you mentioned him as a surprise coming in, how well 𝗕𝗂𝗻𝗄𝗧 played last Sunday, especially in the first half. I think we were a beaten pack in the second half. And I think a lot of that was due to Lynette going off and, swapping around. But in the first half, I think 𝗕𝗂𝗻𝗄𝗧 was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, and he was, to be fair, Steve, I think the side did okay in that first half. I mean, there was victims of their own downfall, really. The amount of times they coughed up possession after being awarded it in good field position, the amount of times they gave the ball on the back of a Hull mistake, and we went on to then make our own. You know, we was really off of our own downfall. I thought that opening 10-minute spell, though, we was red hot, and we saw that with Mikey Lewis's offload to Jack Walker. He scores his first try in the red and white of Hull Kingston Rovers, and I will say, I mean, Mikey Lewis is coming for some criticism over his time at the Robins, and more so than his last game. I thought he played much better. I thought he played with a little bit of a wide red. Yes, he still had some errors in him, trying to win penalties and etc. etc. But that offload to Jack Walker was the best of Mikey Lewis. That aggression, that pace, that trying to beat the line, and to come up with that bit of magic at the end was the try that Jack Walker scored. I think Mikey Lewis was very impressive then.
It was a sublime pass, wasn't it? His arm hadn't touched the ground, and to see it, I think I liken it to a pass from Gavin Miller once gave Gary Clark back in the day. You know, you think he's covered, they're tackling him, they've got him, and then suddenly the ball flicks out and it's try time. It was sublime. But I think this weekend will give Mikey Lewis a rest, and it will help him for next week in the semi-final.
Yeah, I've seen many supporters say that, Karl, that actually, God, you never want to wish an injury on anybody, especially a HIA, but it feels like he's maybe been taken out the firing line a little bit. And of course, you know, it's helped now that we've got Brad Schneider in at the club to alleviate that pressure on Mikey. And I wonder if this break might just come at the right time for him, like Steve says, going into a semi-final as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's no doubt the lad's got talent. Like you say, you want to see him play every week, but just every now and then, I think someone needs to pull the reins in on him, because he's got all the talent under the sun. But, you know, it needs to be used in the right manner. So if we can rest him up this week and be fresh for the semi, then obviously it benefits us and us only.
Yeah, Steve, it was 6-0 at half-time. My opinion was at half-time wasn't going to be enough. I watched the game back on Sky Sports. Paul Cook, of course, who was featured on the podcast regular, he said that I saw his half-time analysis, and he said there's no way that Hull FC would be able to play that bad again in the second half. And Tony Smith seemed to give him a bit of a rollicking at half-time. And it worked, didn't it? Because we saw a break down the middle and Adam Swift goes in for a try. And that got Hull right back into the game.
Just before half-time, I was screaming for a drop kick, for a drop goal. You know, we had possession inside the Hull 20 for 2 sets, I think, or 2 parts of sets, but certainly a drop goal, going 7-6. In the past, that's worked for us, something like that. And I was disappointed that no one, I don't think anyone was leading the team at that point. You know, you wanted somebody to say, right, lads, let's set this up, a drop goal. And we just threw the ball about like headless chickens again. I think it was around that time when Jimmy Karnos put the kick in that ran dead and gave them 7 tackles. Not Karnos,
Milnes.
Jez Litton.
Yeah.
He put a kick in, and it just ran dead. No one was telling anybody what's happening. And that was what was frustrating me towards the end of the first half. People making decisions on their own and switching play, and other people were saying, well, what's going on? You know, and then, right, so you come into the... I've got to say there is one Hull player I do like, and that's Adam Swift. I've liked him since his St Helens days, and I know what a strike player he is. And he proved it. And I saw him come in, and I thought, there's a move on here, you know. And sure enough, it happened. I don't think Jack Walker had any chance against him. I don't think Sam Tompkins would have had any chance against him, or Zach Ardacre. When Swift gets the ball like that, you know it's good night Vienna, and he scores. And you know, he's the one Hull player that I wish we could have had in our team, to be honest.
Yeah, Karl, it was very reminiscent of the try that Hull Kingston and Rovers scored on Good Friday last season, wasn't it? Where Ethan Ryan made a break down the middle and managed to offload to 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗀𝗏, and he goes in for the try. And, you know, that bit of pace did seem to pay for the Robins on Sunday. And really, Karl, we never got going, and it was compounded by the fact Sean Kenny-Dowell received a yellow card. Hull scored during that period, and you felt the game was starting to creep away from the Robins then.
Yeah, there was a couple of plays in that period of the game where I think I spoke about it earlier in terms of we got to an end of a set, Litton put a kick in that wasn't on, and none of the wide men knew what was going on. And on the back of that, I think Kenny-Dowell decided to set somebody's head off, didn't he? So them two plays is massive in terms of how the game ended up shaping. And like you say, after that, we just couldn't get going again, and our attack was all at sea. And then after that, it was just an uphill battle in the end.
I think the judges will argue with you, Karl. It was shoulder first.
Yeah,
I think what if they dealt with it during the game, so no, the fair action was needed. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, he's not received any further suspension or anything from the match review panel. They deemed that he'd hit the shoulder first before then making contact with the head. So, hey, look, I mean, at the time though, it could have been much worse than a yellow, couldn't it? It could have been a red if it had gone to the screen. But Hull did take their opportunity when we was down to 12 men and they went and scored a try. There was a moment, Steve, when Rowan Milnes got a penalty to go for 2 points. Do you think that had a big bearing on the game in the end?
I think it probably did. I think it was a bit far out. I mean, as you know, I'm a bit of a gambling man, and I would have been backing against him kicking that goal, you know, because of the pressure and everything. And the way his game had gone on the day, he didn't have the best of days. And I think the big changing point was when Lynette went off. I think that was the big changing point amongst the forwards. And when you've got a beaten pack, you've got beaten halfbacks. It's as simple as that. And I don't think Milnes had his best game. And maybe if he'd have kicked the goal, his confidence would have risen. But he missed it. And I think we should have gone for touch and gone for a try at that point.
It's a funny one, isn't it, Karl? Because that Rowan Milnes kick, in the context of a professional rugby league player being able to kick the distance and get it in the post when you're kicking almost down the middle of the pitch, it should really be an easy kick, shouldn't it? That shouldn't have been a difficult kick. But for whatever reason, I mean, Rovers players, I mean, all season we've struggled with our goal kicking. I think we're only behind Wigan this season with missed kicks. And it is something that cost the Robins dearly. I mean, I don't think that ultimately did cost the Robins. But we do need to be smarter with our kicks. We need to be better. And at the moment, I don't know what the answer is. I know Schneider, he's a kicker, whether he'll take over the duties. We'll see, won't we? Another incident which didn't ultimately didn't come off for the Robins was 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗧, his disallowed try for a double movement. I mean, when I was stood in the East Stand, Steve, for the life of me, I thought I couldn't understand why he hadn't given it. I couldn't understand why he hadn't gone to the screen. Obviously, when you watch it back on TV, you can understand why it wasn't given. But for that split second when I'm watching it live on the terrace, I was screaming blue murder because I thought he rolled over in one movement, stretched over and put the ball down, and I couldn't believe why it wasn't a try at the time.
It's an ambiguous decision by the referee because it was all one movement. So I guess the rule is the minute your ball carrying arm touches the ground, that's the end of play. In the past, I can't remember that being the case. If you've got one movement like that, I mean, I know it's the rules now, but you know, in the past that would have been a try for all money, and we were very unlucky there, very unlucky.
And if we had scored that try, then Karl, that would have been a key moment, wouldn't it? Because we'd have been right into the game there. unfortunately, Karl, much like the rest of the game and on all of the 80 minutes on Sunday, it was a bit like what if, shoulda, woulda, couldas. And ultimately, what you've got to look at is Rovers didn't take the opportunities when they was presented to them, and Hull came away with a victory, but it very much felt like a game that Rovers lost rather than a game that our black and white rivals won.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Coulda, woulda, shoulda definitely comes to mind, and I think I said to you about half an hour, 35 minutes in, both teams was that poor in terms of dropping the ball and forced. I think it was just a case of whichever team could reel it in and not drop them balls as much would end up coming away with the spoils, and unfortunately that wasn't us. But yeah, it was certainly one of the afternoons where you know they had a couple of half decent sets and then the knock on, then they end up back up against the six again or a penalty, and then they just sort of hesitated the way through the most of the second half, and they just couldn't really get going. But there was a few key times in the game where you thought, right, now's the time, let's push on, let's make the right decision, let's make the right call, let's get a bit of momentum behind us. But like I say, unfortunately, it just wasn't to be on Sunday.
I think we missed 𝗕𝗂𝗻𝗂𝗏 badly. I think that was one of the key misses because, as I said earlier, we had no one to tell us what to do, if you like. No one to direct us, and 𝗕𝗂𝗻𝗏𝗏 would have done that. And he'd have loved that game. He really would have loved that game. And I think
1-7 and 13, Steve.
Sorry?
I think any team struggling with a 1-7 and 13, it's a massive ask, isn't it? It doesn't matter who you are. You'll take them 3 sparring players out of any team in the world. You're struggling straight away.
Yeah. The other thing, just going back to the penalty that he missed, he didn't just miss it; he didn't find dead either.
Yeah.
They came away, I think they made about 40 or 50 meters on the back of him not finding dead, and that to me, it's crucial. If you're going to go for goal in that situation, you make sure if you're going to miss, you make sure you kicked it hard enough for it to go, into dead. And we never did that. Those are the little things.
That's another
50%ers that make a whole difference to the game.
That was more confusing on my point because when he lined up, was it just short of the halfway line, if I remember rightly?
Yeah.
I never felt confident that he'd even get it on target. Never mind kick it long enough for it to go. Then diffuse a problem. So it was it was certainly bizarre and definitely not the right call in my opinion.
I said to you, I was stood with you at the time, and I think it looked like he was told to go for 2 rather than him coming over and going, no, I am 100%. Going for 2. There seemed to be a bit of a debate whether to go for touch, whether to or whether they should kick it, and it took a few, probably not a long, only a few seconds, but it did look like he was probably told to go for it or coached into going for it rather than him being really wanting to go for it. But hey, look, he missed it. I think Steve's right. If you're going to miss it, at least kick it dead. We didn't, and I think that was just a story of the game, Steve, where we just gave them that many leg ups, that many opportunities that eventually they had to take them. And you saw their scenes of jubilation at the end. It was an important victory for them. Crucially, Steve, it's an important victory for them, not just for the bragging rights. It's because of where it puts them in the league table behind us and the points it puts them on. And we're going to talk about the Leeds game very shortly, but it makes that game even more important now because of that defeat against the Black and Whites.
Yeah, this is a vital match against Leeds. And looking at, you are going to talk about it, so we'll talk about it when you're ready. But just looking at our team, we've got players there that can win this. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, just some stats from the game against Hull. Ryan Hall, he showed up once again. 146 meters he made. Sean Kennedy-Dowell was second with 136. Tackle bust, Ryan Hall 7. Tom Opperchick and Jack Walker with 5. Dean Hadley was our top tackler with 40 tackles. Jimmy Kynors, we've already mentioned what an impressive return to the side it was for him. He made 36 tackles. Crucially, missed tackles. Jes Litton 7, Rhys Kennedy 6, Lewis Johnson 5. Errors, Sean Kennedy-Dowell came up with 3. Matty Staunton came up with 2. Rowan Milnes came up with 2. Mikey Lewis came up with 2. In total, we had 9 errors. A little bit of a quiz for you now, guys, because I've got some stats for the whole of the season now here. So I'm going to pose some questions to you. Which player do you think, I'll start with you, Steve, has made the most errors this season?
I think it's Sean Kenny-Downe, perhaps, because he's often
in the top 3. Sean SKD's in the top 3.
Yeah, because he's often trying to release the ball when there's nobody there to take it.
Yeah, so I'll give you the answer. So Mikey Lewis, he's made the most errors this season, 21. Sean Kenny-Downe, 20. Corey Hall, which is a bit of a surprise, he's fared with errors, 16. The slight caveat to the errors is that Mikey Lewis has played every game this season. Sean Kenny-Downe, 10 games. Corey Hall, 11, which if you put that on an average, means that obviously they're making more errors on average. Karl, for you, who's been our top tackler this season?
Oh, Adley, I'd say. Oh, there.
Well, it was the man who was missing on Sunday, who's our top tackler at the moment. Elliot Minchella with 514 tackles. Matty Parcells second in the list with 464. And Dean Hadley is third with 417. James Batchelor was in the lead until his injury. He was averaging 32 tackles a game before he got injured. So, you take him out the side, you take Minchella out the side, you're losing a huge amount of work in there, right? Dean Hadley has been performing admirably, trying to cover almost, them two really with the amount of tackles he's making. So great credit to him. Last question before we talk about the Leeds game. Steve, who's missed the most tackles this season?
Could that be Jez?
No. He's in the top 4.
I can't think who else.
And he's a clear leader in this one. A clear leader.
Missed the most tackles. Well, is it Mikey again?
Yeah, Mikey Lewis has missed 61 tackles this season. Following him is Jez Litton and Rhys Kennedy on 37. And then behind them is Jordan Abdul on 35 tackles. So a little bit surprising. I'll tell you what, I'll give you one more before we speak to Stats Man Rhys, the Leeds Rhinos fan. Karl, who's made the most offloads this season?
Oh, I'd have said Skids.
Steve, do you want to come in with another guess?
Yeah, I think is Sam Luckley up there?
So we've got Sam Luckley on 20. Who do you think might be behind him?
Made the most offloads, you say?
Yeah.
You just said behind him. So is Sam?
Yeah, sorry. Who's made the second most offloads?
Rhys Kennedy?
No, Elliot Minchella. So we've got Sam Luckley on 20 offloads this season, Elliot Minchella on 19. And in third place is the man from down under, Tom Opachik, with 16 offloads. We move on. Let's brush that defeat to Hull FC under the carpet. Let's pretend it never happened because it's time to move on. We are playing the Leeds Rhinos on Friday night. It'll be our first trip to Leeds before we then go again the week after for our Challenge Cup semi-final against Wigan. But to help us preview the game, I caught with Stats Man Rhys, who's part of the Lock Pod podcast, Leeds Rhinos. He's also helped me come up with some stats, and during his our little chat, he comes up with some more. So it's a really interesting listen. Stats Man Rhys, thank you for joining me on this week's Red Robin Podcast Weekly. Of course, the Robins travel to Headingley on Friday night to take on the Leeds Rhinos. And it's a Leeds Rhinos side that have hit a bit of form recently, with them coming into the game on the back of 3 victories. Of course, that follows 3 defeats. And it's been a little bit of a funny old season for the Leeds Rhinos, hasn't it, Rhys?
It's been consistently inconsistent from the beginning of the season. It felt like we're winning one and losing one, and then we had the losing streak. And there were calls for Rowan Smith to go after the defeat to Wakefield, but obviously Wakefield won 3 games now, so clearly they're a very good side. So clearly we just help them in the way. But there was a call for Rowan Smith to go at that point. I was surprised that he didn't. I was kind of sitting on the fence whether I think he should or not. I couldn't see where we were going to improve, and then all of a sudden, this very special evening on the Borough game for the Huddersfield on a couple of three rounds ago came, and we won 50-odd-0, and it was just came out of the blue and nowhere. And since then, we've really just carried that forward with a good win against Warrington, and then a tight win on Sunday at Salford. So yeah, it's the momentum has shifted back in the right way, I think, for the Rhinos, and I think we saw from last season. Momentum is scary. You know, that phrase, it's happening again, is appearing for us. There's no point of starting well, because we'll just finish well at the second half and just scrape into the playoffs and do something with it at the end.
Yeah, I mean, if you're honest, Rhys, is this where you expected to be, you know, at the start of the season when you was making your pre-season predictions? No.
I as much as I'm laughing at or smirking at the "it's happening again" remark, I'd much rather be in the top 6 for the majority of the season. I really thought we should have, you know, the minimum expectation for the Leeds fans to be a top 4 side, regardless.
Yeah.
And it should always be a playoffs, so...
It's almost ironic, really, Rhys. I mean, Rovers travel to Leeds again next week for a Challenge Cup semi-final, as we did last year. And preceding that game was a game against Leeds Rhinos. I think it was Rowan Smith's first game in charge.
First win as well, wasn't it? I think it was a 12-0 win, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, I will counter that by saying it was probably one of the worst performances I've ever seen from a Hull Kingston Rovers side. And it never really got better after that in the Challenge Cup semi-final either. So it's funny how history repeats itself. Hopefully it's not the same level of performance that we see on Friday night as we did last year, but the two sides are pretty even at the moment, Rhys. I've just been looking at the league table. Leeds on 18 points in 7th place, Hull Kingston Rovers in 8th place on 18 points as well. We've both conceded the same amount of points, and Leeds Rhinos have scored 383 points. Rovers have scored 352 points, so only 31 more points difference. And of course, you had that battering, you battered Huddersfield, which obviously
overinflates it somewhat.
Yeah, so when you look at that though, Rhys, and going into the game on Friday, pretty even, although Rovers travelling to it on the back of 1 victory in the last 7 games.
I'm not sure how. I mean, I think, you know, at the beginning when we played you at your place, where 𝗕𝓸𝓷𝓼 just kicked us off the park and tore us apart, quite frankly. I feel like our situations have flipped. We were in a bit of a bad form then, and you were I think 2nd or 3rd at the time. And you know, whilst the positions are still where you're ahead, I feel like the form is very different. And looking at the table as a whole probably doesn't give a fair reflection at the moment. So if I look at the last 5 games at the moment, Leeds are scoring 26 points a game, whereas Hull KR are currently bottom in the form table for the last 5. We've only scoring 11.6 per game. We're currently conceding 14 points per game in the last 5 games, which is currently the lowest in the league at the moment, whereas you guys are conceding 25.2 points a game, which is the 3rd highest at the moment. So I think the form table tells a story that it might not be as tight as it could be. Obviously, stats are stats, and I tell part of the story. I think the other stat for you guys is the injury list. You know, I think Leeds Rhinos fans can't hide from the fact that that injury list is extensive, and including players that we would have quite happily in our side. You know, my co-host Eddie will always say, would I be jealous of having that person in our side? And there's a couple of those players that are on your injury list that we would quite happily have in our side. So I think whilst the total table looks similar, I think the actual table looks very different. I mean, just another stat, KR are only scoring 2.2 tries a game at the moment, but conceding 3.8. We're scoring 4.4 tries a game and conceding 2.6. We're actually making the most, I think you're conceding the second amount highest of meters in the last 5 games, whereas we are making the second highest amount of meters per game in that moment. So the form table, the last 5, suggests that Leeds should be weighted towards Leeds as favourites.
Yeah, and I was looking at that meters made, and across the whole of the season, there's only Castleford, Wakefield, and Hull FC who have made less meters than the Robins. And we come into the game, of course, the squad news has reached us now, and for Leeds, they welcome back Blake Austin and Justin Sangai.
Stone Cold Blake Austin, just to put that
Stone Cold Blake Austin, okay, and Jack Sinfield comes back in. Injuries for Leeds: Donaldson, Newman, Tetevano, and Morgan Gannon. For the Robins, it looks like new signing Brad Schneider is going to make his debut, fresh from signing from the Canberra Raiders. James Batchelor is a welcome addition to the side. Of course, he suffered that horrendous neck injury at Magic Weekend against Salford. He's fit and back and raring to go. And two youngsters named in the squad, Leo Tennyson and Lenny Ellis. I mean, when you look at that squad news, Rhys, you must be pleased that Stone Cold 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗧's back in the squad. And of course, we've seen what Sangare can do. You must be pretty happy with them returning.
Yeah, I was a bit worried last week with Blake being out that he's really been controlling the games. I mean, Caesar's looked good because Blake's been that good in against Huddersfield and against Warrington. But Caesar stepped up on Sunday. It wasn't a perfect performance, but he stepped up, and there were some really big moments from him. I think Cam Smith started to get back into his great form as well, and he got a good try on Sunday. So, from a team perspective, it's about as good as it really gets for Rhinos. Really, without other than Newman. I can probably live without 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏 not being in the 13, to be honest, because I don't think we're losing much with not being there. But I think Newman's the only player that I would want to go. I really want that player back. And while Sangare's been out, we've got quite a good depth at prop. And again, they're all sort of with Holroyd coming back from injury as well. We're doing quite well on that front. And we don't have a Challenge Cup game in a week's time. I don't know if you guys will be resting players, whether where does the priority lie for you guys in that? There's a playoff spot in place, but equally there's also a spot at Wembley.
Yeah, it's a great point, Rhys. And we speak about it later on in the podcast that after the defeat to our bitter rivals on Sunday, many supporters probably writ off our chances of being in the playoffs come the end of the season. But the Huddersfield victory over Catalan, of course, Wakefield beating Wigan, results are all over the place at the moment, aren't they? So basically, if you can just keep within there and not get too far cut adrift, I think you've got a chance. And you only have to look at 6 to 9. Salford in 6th place, Leeds in 7th, Rovers 8th, and then Hull FC in 9th. Only 4 points separate them teams, and there's still, that's why really this game is such an important one, because a victory for Leeds pushes them further into that playoff place. A defeat for Rovers leaves us languishing a little bit out of it. Of course, it pushes us closer to our rivals who play Castleford at the weekend. So it is a real roller coaster of a season so far. And I just think this game, I don't know, Rhys, many people would have said we've got to rest players, etc. But we are blessed with a dearth of resources at the moment, which is quite ironic, because one of the things that people were lauding at the start of the season was our squad depth. And it's ironic we find ourselves in this position now.
Is it 8 or 9 players you've got out, including obviously your Lewises and your Abduls and everyone else?
Yeah. So we've got, obviously Lynette and Mikey Lewis. They suffered failed HIAs at the weekend. I think we're running with about 7 players out injured at the moment. And it's not necessarily the number of injuries, it's the injuries to key players and the positions that play, and hence why Schneider was signed from the Canberra Raiders to try and add a bit of competition. I suppose our luck this season, Rhys, was summed up with signing Schneider to add a bit of competition for Rowan Milnes and Mikey Lewis on the back of a Jordan Abdul injury. In the very last play of the game, Mikey Lewis gets a head knock on Sunday. Obviously, then fails a HIA, and the player who comes in to add a bit of competition is straight into the starting lineup with Mikey Lewis missing, and it is our luck this season at the moment. But like I said, a lot of people would have wanted us to rest players. I don't think we've got that luxury, and Willie Peters, the coach, wants us to go into every game with our best chance of winning it. And hey, look, we've got Batchelor coming back. He needs game time. You can't always put your eggs all in one basket. And I do think that 2 points against Leeds, if we can get them, are going to be really important for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think it's important for both teams. I mean, if Leeds lose last weekend, playoffs, it was a 6-point game for us.
Tell me about that game, Rhys, because it's all blew up on social media about the referee's performance. Salford fans, I've seen some of the stuff that they've been putting out.
Go put your kit on, go get a whistle and go referee a game, and then you can come and make a moan if you want. I mean, look, there was referees have a hard job, and I've probably spat my dummy out. I probably definitely have this season on a lot pod at some point at some refereeing decisions, thinking about the red card for James McDonnell against Saints for a punch that didn't even happen. But you know, at the end of the day, there's a guy behind the whistle. You know, abuse, him getting escorted down the tunnel. It's just not acceptable. Getting called a cheat. No referee sets out to cheat, except the French wheelchair referee, of course, he did. But look, the referee wasn't great on both sides. Things were missed. Maybe if Riley wasn't jumping around all the time and falling on his arse, that it would be all right. But I think that, you know, the bigger point for that game on Sunday was that Leeds took control in the last 15 minutes and then made the most of the errors. You know, Mark Sneyd shouldn't have been on the pitch. You know, he proper hurt his leg. He was hopping around. He kicks goal line drop out. It goes on the full, and that's 2 points in front of the post. You know, little things like that, and the momentum changed in the last 10, 15 minutes, and Leeds closed out that win. So, yeah, look, referee abuse is not right. But until you go put your kit on and get a whistle and do it yourself, I don't think you should be really calling people cheats. Yeah,
I was just looking at the last 3 games, the 3 games that you lost prior to your 3-game winning run, and Wakefield 24 points to 14, Leeds 24, Castleford 26, Saints 12, 13-12. Close games, and this was another one against Salford. Is there a bit of a steely resolve in that Leeds side? That is never say never, because you seem to be, you know, in the game and being able to flip this one against Salford, who were a contender for the playoffs as well. You know, that must give the side a lot of confidence going into this game against Rovers.
I think we've got quite a bit of evidence of that this year. Obviously, beating Saints at their place in round 3, the phenomenal win against Catalan at home, which that was a 20-point comeback or something like that. You know, we had a comeback against Huddersfield, so I think this Leeds side has it in them to do the comebacks. But I think the difference between the Salford game and the 3 games that we lost close previously was because in those games where we lost, we didn't have players playing in their positions. Whereas on Sunday, they took the decision to put Corey, a young academy player, in at halfback who's not really experienced there, but that meant it kept Hanley on the wing. It kept Myler at fullback. Myler's got 8 assists in the last 5 games as well. It kept 𝗕𝗓𝗓 in halfback. It kept Jared at 9 and Cammy at 13. It kept the players in the right positions, and I think that's the difference between the Salford win and losing to Wakefield and Cass, was that we had the people in the right positions. From that instance. So you can have injuries, but I just think, and the versatility is great, but playing the players in the right positions has shown and proved its worth really on Sunday, but in the last games as well.
And on that then, who have been the star men this season? Who are you expecting to be the star man on Friday night?
There's 2 players that just go under the radar but they do a phenomenal job, and that's Jared O'Connor and James McDonnell. Jared at 9, he's not an elusive 9. He's not a 9 that you'll notice from his runs from dummy half, but he marshals the defence. You know, he doesn't miss tackles. He's a solid young player, but he runs when he needs to, and his distribution is getting great. But he just goes under the radar, but phenomenally. McDonnell is an absolute workhorse in second row. The guy we signed from Wigan, he's been a great find. And again, he just runs around the pitch and just tackles absolutely everything that moves. And he's got a bit of attacking flair. So those people do great work under the radar. But the people to watch out for is, you know, Nenny McDonald is one. His runs from dummy half will often get 15, 20 metres. He's probably got some of the most clean breaks for the Rhinos this year. And I think Cammy as well is one. Is another player to watch out for. He's not quite been engaging the line as much. He's been a bit easy to read recently, but in the last few games, he's really been that ball-playing 13 that he's been fantastic at. And then finally, Stone Cold Blake Austin. He was, the form that he's playing under. Obviously, he's playing for a contract, but the form he was on against Huddersfield and Warrington. If that kicking game, that control of the game, and that running game comes out on Friday, I think any team would find it hard to stop.
Yeah, so if that all goes to plan, in your eyes, that'll probably lead to a Leeds Rhinos victory. But where are the weaknesses? What could the Robins exploit on Friday night?
I think the kicking game in attack. Rhinos were great on the goal line defence on Sunday, but we conceded all three tries were conceded from kicks through. And we know from Jordan Abdul's performance at your place early in the year that the kicking game was what destroyed us. So I think if if there was a weak point to expose for Leeds, is one to, when you're in that space in the last 20, to try some of those kicks, whether it's in the air or whether it's on the ground, and expose that, because I think 𝗲𝗡𝗄𝗧 can get caught out of position sometimes, and he did make a mistake for 𝗕𝘂𝗁𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 try on Sunday. And I think the other thing as well is not letting us get off the line in defence, in that running at us. Leeds have this standoff defence sometimes, which I don't necessarily always agree with, but if you can let us doing that without us having to push up, I think the meters that you guys can make in the position you can put yourselves in would be good to put yourself in those positions to kick.
Yeah, we're going to be in uncharted territory on Friday night with Sneijder making his debut. By all accounts, he's going to partner Rowan Milnes on Friday night. We have got Lenny Ellis, a young academy player who's named in the 21-man squad, but it'd be very unlikely to see him play on Friday night. So it looks like Milnes and Sneijder. And it's going to be interesting to see what roles they play. We know what to expect from Milnes. Very good short kicking game, likes to organise, likes to be in control. And then that normally is counter-foiled by Mikey Lewis, who has a strong running game, bit of flair, bit of creativity. Sneijder, he's supposed to be sitting in the middle of them two and be able to do a little bit of everything. So you're going to be interested to see what he can do on Friday night, and Robins fans are definitely going to be interested to see what he can do. And who knows? I mean,
fear of the unknown, doesn't it? It's fear of the unknown for Rhinos. There's not much tape on him. We don't know. How do you prepare for a guy that you don't know what's going to do? Yeah,
and that's it. I mean, he's been in the country for, by the time he plays on Friday night against Leeds, he'll have been in just short of a week, which isn't a huge amount of time to adapt. It's not a massive amount of time to get to know your teammates and read the playbook and all that. But look, what we've seen in Super League so far this season, Rhys, is that regardless of your game plan and the form book, results happen for a number of reasons. And then it really is what happens in between that minute 1 and that 80th minute. And we've seen on a number of occasions that anything can happen. So on that, though, are you expecting anything to happen? Or are you confident that the Leeds Rhinos will come away with a victory?
Well, I was just looking at page 3 of my excuse book, and I realised that on Friday night it's meant to absolutely pour it down as well. And Leeds,
just like last year.
Yeah, Leeds are a bit of a fair weather side, but again, if you haven't got 𝗵𝗲𝗏 doing those bombs, I'm not sure how much influence it is. But no, I'm confident for Friday, and I think that's confidence from the 3 wins at the 𝗓𝗏𝗏, the man of those wins. I am going to take confidence from the fact that you've got key players missing, from that aspect as well, and what the form table is telling me as well. So I think it could be a 16 to 20 point victory for Leeds on Friday.
Wow, that's not just a sneaky victory, is it? That's a comprehensive victory.
No, and I'll be happily be proved wrong. But I think just that's what the form table is telling me. The injuries that you guys have got, the Challenge Cup next week, I think there's those things coming together. But again, the fear of the unknown with Sneijder could change that. The weather could change that as well. But my confidence is high at the moment. And you've been on the Lot Pod. We're a little bit delusional.
Steve, Karl, I mean, fundamentally, Leeds are going into this game in much better form than what the Robins are. Fundamentally, Steve, something's got to change on it with the Robins, because if you go by the form guide, you go by the stats, especially the last 5 games, Leeds will win. So something is going to have to change on Friday. Steve, what will it be?
Success is failure turned inside out, and given the season that we're seeing throughout the rugby league this season, I'm just very, very hopeful that we can swing it around. I think losing to Hull hurts badly, and I just think I still think we're a chance. I want to tell you something. About 5 or 6 years ago, I went up to the Scottish Open golf. I went for the weekend, and that Friday that I was there, the start of the weekend, Rovers played Leeds at Headingley, and we went in the pub to watch it. And Rovers, on the face of it, were second favourites, and they absolutely marmalised Leeds. This weekend it's the Scottish Open golf, and so I'm just hoping the same Friday night, wet weather, that's what happened that night, and I'm just hoping Rovers can snatch a close victory. It'll be a close one.
So what you're telling me, Steve, other than clutching at straws, we haven't got much to go on.
No, yeah. No, I just look at the Leeds team. It's funny because, was it Neil they called the lad there? He mentioned two players that I've got asterisks against, O'Connor and McDonald. This kid McDonald's excellent. You can see where he learned his trade at Wigan. And but he could be matched by James Batchelor, you know. 𝗧𝗍𝗄, we've got to let 𝗧𝗍𝗄 worry about us rather than us worry about 𝗧𝗍𝗄. But look. I know the bookmakers are going to give us about 8 to 10 start at least, maybe a dozen. So we're not favourites, but just the way the season's gone for everybody, you know, we're a chance the minute we set foot on the park.
Yeah, Karl, James Batchelor, he's going to be huge coming back to that side. I mean, it's been so impressive when he has played for the Robins, and he's been a huge miss when he hasn't played. We've got Sneijder coming into the team. He really is the unknown. He'll only be in the country for, a week when he steps foot on Headingley soil on Friday night. So who knows? We literally do not know what's going to happen there. We hope he's going to click. I mean, the expectation is that it will be Sneijder and Milnes who play in the halfbacks. I'll be very surprised if Lenny Ellis gets a knock, although he's named in the 21-man squad. So you'd expect it to be Milnes and Sneijder. But Sneijder and Batchelor coming in, that could be the difference. You know, that really could be the difference. And I'm not as fearful going into this game, knowing that them two are taking to the field. Yeah, it's a bit of a punt, but they are going to be important additions to the side.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think there was a lot of doom and gloom on Sunday/Monday, obviously, with the the weekend's result. But like we touched on earlier, there's still some half decent players on that squad on paper, isn't there? So if we can get our act together and build our way into the game, you know, even I'm not saying Rovers will win the game, but for me, these next few weeks is all about putting them building blocks in place and getting some confidence back, getting some wheels in motion back. And also getting playing behind the structure that we was playing behind at the beginning of the season. You know, in any sport, confidence is a massive thing. And if Rovers have a good start, they get confident early, score a couple of tries. You know, nobody can take it away from us if we do that. And if we do that, we'll give our every chance to run that game close and possibly win it. So, but having Batchelor and Sneijder, like he says, is definitely two pluses. I just hope Batchelor's not too far off it in terms of just coming back, and we're all expecting a bit too much from him, because obviously it was a very, very serious neck injury, etc. So it's going to be difficult, but like Steve says, you're in it to win it, aren't you? So, and worse things and things have happened in sport previously. So I can't see us winning, but it's building blocks for the future, in my opinion.
I think we go back to the old edicts that Willie Peters made his reputation from earlier in the season. And I think he said, let's win the game and score the points. So what we need to do is defend up front, just get on top of Leeds, let them make the mistakes, force them into mistakes. Don't wait for them to attack us, because I've known throughout history, Leeds teams, you'll give them an inch and they'll take them out. So what you've got to do, get among them. And like they did I think it was a pre-season friendly when we played Leeds, they didn't look like beating us. They certainly didn't look like beating us in the league match. And the reason for that was we got among them. We frightened the forwards to death. And they had no answer. And I think that's what we've got to do this weekend. We've got to get right amongst them and say, right, we're the bosses. Now they're going to say, do you want to play in the semi-final next week to individual play? Because it only needs a knock, doesn't it? And you're out the semi-final. So we've got to be aware of that. But let's not be afraid of getting amongst them and making them think, rather than them having to make us think.
It's all giving yourself a chance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was going to say, Steve, it is an important point you make, because I've seen a lot of Rovers supporters say, well, really, Willie Peters should be resting XYZ on Friday night. I mean, to be fair, at the moment, we don't have that luxury of being able to necessarily rest.
He's resting two key players without knowing it. If you obviously Mikey Lewis, but the other one's Kane Lynette. If you remember last season, Kane Lynette was playing brilliantly, got a bad injury, played in that first 10 minutes of the semi-final and then had to go off and then was out for a long time. Kane Lynette had a fantastic restful period and he came back fit, right? So, all right, this is only one game, but he's going to have a rest. And, you know, without, I was saying to a few of my mates, I would rest Lynette anyway before the head injury. I was saying I'd let him miss the Leeds game because he was looking jaded. He was still tackling, still going through everything, but he was still looking jaded in what was a jaded position. So the fact that Lynette's going to be missing and the fact that Mikey is probably good, because Mikey winds Harry Smith up for next week. You know, he knows how to wind out Harry Smith up. And so these are two key players that are going to have a rest. And the rest of them, well, you've got to play them. And my first choice player at fullback will be Ethan Ryan.
Well, the point being as well, Steve, is that for the Wigan semi-final, potentially we could have Kane Lynette coming back, Mikey Lewis coming back, and we could also have 𝗟𝗡𝗀𝗀𝗀 coming back into the side. So the point being is on Friday night, you've got players there who are vying for a semi-final spot because the competition should be hotter the week after. So this is a chance to stake a claim to say, hey, hang on, Willie, I should be in the team next week. It don't matter who's coming back. I've earned my place in the semi-final lineup because of what I did the previous game against Leeds. So it isn't a dead rubber. It's an important game. And I think this is where players should rise to the challenge. And I think Willie Peters is right to name his strongest side possible, because we need to go to Leeds and get the 2 points. We need to make a statement going into the semi-final, and we need to keep within touching distance of them playoffs. Because if we stay in there, we stay in the hunt come the end of the season when we've got players returning and we're in the fight. You look back at games against like this Leeds one where you got, God, that 2 points was so important. So for me, you know, we can't rest on our laurels. We've got to go into that game wanting to win, which I'm sure they will. I know they will. But also, them players, like I said, are playing for a semi-final spot. Now, an interesting line on the website when it names the 21-man squad, it was the very last line. It says, Lenny Ellis and Leo Tennyson will gain valuable experience from being part of the Robins pre-game build-up ahead of Friday's game. Now, Karl, that says to me that them boys are in the squad for the experience of being in the squad. So take them two out and you've got your 19-man squad for Friday night. Interestingly, though, there is a question mark over Jack Walker. Willie Peters said earlier in the week that he's touch and go because of a rib injury. Now, if he doesn't play, you'd imagine, like Steve said, maybe Ethan Ryan going to the fullback slot, which then promotes Senior onto the right wing. So although Jack Walker might be a doubt, I wouldn't say, Karl, it would necessarily be the biggest blow. And that's no disrespect to Jack Walker. It's just that the player who will be replacing him is a very able replacement.
No, in my opinion, I think whether Walker's fit or not, I think you play Ethan Ryan at fullback.
Really? You'd play him anyway?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. What he's done early on in the season, you know, he was good early on in the season, and before he got that jaw injury, he was fairly consistent. And like I said earlier on in the piece, Willie Peters have rewarded players that are being consistently good on a week-to-week basis. So for me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, but it's an interesting one, Steve.
I
I was going to say as well, Steve, it's an interesting one as well because Jack Walker's cup-tied for the semi-final. Yeah. So it does leave a bit of a question mark in Willie Peters' head. Does he play someone who's going to play the week after? Although Matty Lane on YouTube, he says, does Mikey Lewis play fullback against Wigan as Walker is cup-tied? I mean, it is going to be interesting to see how they line up the fullback spot on Friday and, of course, for the semi-final as well.
I'd have Ryan at fullback. The game he played against Wigan where he broke his jaw, he had a blinder that day. So Ryan would be my fullback for the semi-final as well, which means, of course, that we're looking at Lewis Senior, aren't we, for the wing spot. And I like Lewis Senior. I just thought what I saw of him in those big World Cup matches for Ireland, they weren't massive matches for Ireland, but he performed well against some good teams. And I think he's got it in him. Made one mistake last time out. And I think, I'm not sure 𝗕𝗂𝗗𝗏𝗂𝗧 particularly likes him, but if he got a break, incidentally, you're looking at two speedy men in the Wigan team, and you need someone with a bit of speed to even try and chase them down if they've got an opening. So I'd play Ethan Ryan, I'd play Lewis Senior, and I'd do that this week as well. Interesting one is who do you play in the second row? Do you keep 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗧 in? I would. I played 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗧 from the off against Leeds, against his old club, and 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗧 never lets us down, So I'm just looking at the squad now, and the players are there to beat them. It's just whether the tactics are there, whether they get the tactics right, where, like I say, getting amongst them and say, right, you're in a match, lads. That's what I do. But looking at the squad, I think 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗧 might not play, and Jack Walker, if he's injured, you don't want to risk him against Leeds anyway.
No, Karl, does 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗧, does he retain his second row spot? Or, we saw Louis Johnson come on for 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, didn't we? When he went off injured, he does give us a lot of energy. He did come up with a few errors, but he does give us energy in that second row, and he's a different type of second row to say James Batchelor. Or do we stick with 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Karl?
No, I think, like I keep stressing, I think he'll reward players who played reasonably well. I know Jimmy's only played one game, and he started to flag a little bit in that second half, but I thought first half he was fairly solid, wasn't he? So I reckon Batchelor will go straight in, and it'll be probably 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, so toss up between him and Johnson. But like I said, I think he will stick with 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, because what you also found with some coaches as well, they seem to throw these curveballs in against players against their old teams, don't they? Hoping that they'll get that extra 10% out of that player. And with 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 being ex-Rhino, you'd like to think if he does throw him in, he would give him that extra 10%. So I reckon that will be the two back rowers.
Yeah, and Steve, fundamentally, the Robins on Friday night, they've got to play the game that's in front of them. Forget about the run of form. Forget about what Leeds have done in the past 5 games, etc., etc. It's about the 80 minutes that's in front of them as soon as they step on to that turf. And do you know what? I am optimistic, and I'm going to say this now, Steve. I'm optimistic for the rest of the season. I think we've got players who will be returning at key points. Yes, Sam Wood, 𝗬𝗎𝗎 and Jordan Abdul are pretty much done for the season. But if we're able to maintain and get the players back, who are injured currently, and get them back into the side, and hopefully, big fingers crossed, touch wood, whatever, I'm getting a rabbit's foot here, we get some good luck and we have a better injury run towards the end, the back end of the season. I'm optimistic of where we'll finish up.
Yeah, I am. First game back after the cup match is Castleford. They will be absolutely worried sick about their immediate futures, because with Wakefield doing what they've done, and so if we can get 2 points here and 2 points against Cass, we're back in the mix. Salford, no, not had any injuries yet. They're getting them now. They're going to struggle, so we can get ahead of Salford. The team out there that's had no injuries are the team that are the form team of the competition, and that's Leigh. So it just shows what injuries do to teams, doesn't it? And looking back in the recent past, Huddersfield had a great season recently. They had no injuries. Castleford had a great season recently. They had no injuries. So if we could just get some players back from the original squad and start gelling together. And you can turn it inside out. You know, they're not gonna want to go to training into matches on a downer. So there must be. If I was, you know, not even 𝗕𝗂𝗗𝗏𝗂𝗓, if I was one of the players, I'd be saying, you know, maybe 𝗕𝗂𝗗𝗏𝗂𝗓 or somebody saying, "Come on, lads, what's going on?" You know, and I think from the pictures I've seen, they look pretty relaxed in training. So, you know, let's shock Leeds, let's shock the league again, and let's go into a semi-final against the Wigan team that you know we can beat. We can beat because we've beaten them this season. We've only lost on Golden Point and beaten them. You know, so let's go in positive man. The way to get positive for the semi-final is to beat Leeds on Friday.
100%. And Steve, very quickly before we finish, great to see Gordon Smith, Gary Prom, John Doherty bring the match ball out for the derby. I was fortunate enough to meet them all on Monday night at the Heritage Trust event, where the supporters got to ask them questions. Three really humble guys. Mike Smith as well, he was there. It was great to hear from him and his stories of yesteryear. And you must have fantastic memories of watching them play and pull on the red and white of Hull Kingston Rovers.
Yeah, there were three outstanding players. I always liked Gordon Smith, always. And Mark Broadhurst was the fourth. Sadly, Mark wasn't able to travel. But I couldn't get there on Monday night, but I wish I could. And I'd love to have heard those stories. And they've got this anniversary dinner coming up, haven't they, on Saturday, on the Queensland victory. And that'll be some night. I don't go because I end up getting in auctions and then things like this shirt behind me.
Well, I spoke to John Doherty last year, Heritage Cast number 19. So if you want to hear his story about when Hull Kingston Rovers famously beat Queensland, you can find that on all the main podcast providers, and it's on YouTube. So make sure you give that a good listen. Steve mentioned the Queensland reunion on Saturday night. That's taking place at Craven Park. There's also a big day of disability rugby league taking place at Hull University with the Robins PDRL side, LDRL side, and wheelchair team all in action on Saturday at the university. So if you're at a loose end, make sure you go catch that. And congratulations to the Rovers women's side who defeated our rivals from across the river on Saturday. If you stayed behind and watch the game, you know it was a fantastic game and well done, Hull Kingston Rovers ladies. So, wow, what a podcast. Plenty to get through once again. We've got the Leeds Rhinos on Friday night. If you are travelling to the game, make sure you're loud and proud and you're cheering on the boys, and hopefully it's enough to push us on to victory. Huge thank you to Karl and Steve for joining me on this week's Red Robin Podcast Weekly, which is powered by Budget Ties Auto Centre. But for now, please just live, love, laugh and be happy.